Okay, so here's your video for R controlled vowels. I wanted to give you some more support just in case you needed some steps on how you might execute this. I'll start with the beginning and just kind of guide us through just so you know how or what you might say in front of your classes. So one of the first things you'd have is you want to make sure that your kids have their notebooks. If you have a separate notebook for writing, then this would go there. They would start off by writing the spelling principle. We call that a spelling principle because it's actually a rule, and which is also known as a pattern. Something you might want to remind students or explain is that in English, all words follow a pattern. And so this is one of them, which says R controlled vowels. When a vowel is followed by an R, the R and the vowel form a syllable. You also want to make sure that your kids write down the example because this could serve as an exemplar word. And so the word here is circus. And before you move on, you want to make sure that you break apart this principle. And so I'm going to read it again. When a vowel is followed by an R, the R and the vowel form a syllable. So like on circus, the R follows the vowel I. So you might want to retouch on what are the vowels in English: A, E, I, O, and U. You might have some smart kids who say and sometimes Y, which is correct because Y is an exception, sometimes making a vowel sound. But for the case of this exercise, it's A, E, I, O, and U. Hopefully by 6th grade they know it because I know we also spent some time on that in 5th grade last year. So before you move forward, once again, you're just going back and saying, okay, so what does this mean? That means when I hear the R sound, like in circus, it's going to follow a vowel, and that means that it's making its own syllable. So another word is character, okay? How many R controlled vowels are in this part? First, you might want to say how many syllables or how many parts are in that word. And so that kind of leads you into your next part of teaching. So let's break that apart. Character, okay? Here's where the division should go. 1, 2, and 3, okay? And if you notice here, this follows that pattern, which says when a vowel is followed by an R, the R and the vowel form a syllable. So notice how this one became part of syllable 1. This is syllable 2 with no R's, and then ter, T-E-R, formed syllable 3. So in other words, when a vowel follows a syllable, it helps to make its own part. Okay, so now let's move into the next part. What is a syllable? What a great question. Well, a syllable, first you want to ask kids and see if they know it. If they don't, give them the answer anyway because you're going to go over it. And so a syllable is a part of a word. If your kids don't know it, it might be very good for them to actually write down the definition because they're going to need it for future word study, but also just to know for their own purposes. If you got some English learners in your class who didn't know what a syllable was, they need to actually have that definition and they need to know what it is for sure. All right? So then you go and talk about, let me make sure this thing works. Move my arrow up. There we go. Okay, it's not moving. Okay, there we go. All right. So a syllable is a part of a word. The word circus has 2 parts, circus, and so go with some more examples, okay? Before we even move forward, this is something that we have to master. And so in case you're wondering, well, why do my kids need to know R-controlled vowels? What a great question. The answer is this. When your kids are reading, one of the things that they do is they have to break apart words. So if they see a word like character and they're not sure how to pronounce it, if they see a word like laboratory, you can tell them to break it apart. One way to break that apart is by actually breaking apart in syllables. Lab or tor e. So first you ask how many parts are in the word laboratory? 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. What do you notice on the word laboratory? Oh, we have 2 R's. 1, 2. And the R's follow what? A vowel, okay, which is trying to show you that same pattern. Okay, so in other words, it's basically applying that pattern that they form their own syllable or help to form a syllable. Okay, so when you have kids who are coming across this word and they stop and say lb, break it apart. The first part is going to be lab. Okay, if they know the R controlled vowel rule, then it's going to sound like or, R, like basically the 5 vowels, A, E, I, O, U, which we'll go over in a second. So if they know how to break that word apart, then they're going to be able to crash through it and keep going, and they won't stumble upon it. So that's one of the reasons why understanding this word pattern is critical. Okay. So then you'll go forward and talk about what a consonant is, and I'm sure you're thinking, well, my kids should know. Well, they should, but once again, this is not terminology that we use on a regular basis. So if we don't have these in our conversations, what is a consonant, what is a vowel, then they might forget, or they may not just know what the actual term is. Okay, so you want to spend maybe a couple of seconds. Hey, what are some consonants? Give me a consonant, which is the opposite of a vowel. B, G, C, D, etc. Okay, we've already talked about what's a vowel, so we're just repeating A, E, whoops, I, O, and U. That's something that kids have to know as well, which you'll find that most of them do. Okay, then you move forward and show them the examples of how this may look. Okay, so let's look at this. Here's another sample word. It's up to you if they write the sample words. Some kids may want to write the sample words just for their knowledge. Let them. You know, do they have to? That's really your choice. So if you read this, it says, here's some more examples. Look at the following words. The vowel is followed by an R, and they help to form a syllable. So, like on the word burn, how many parts are in the word burn? 1. And because we know that there is only one vowel sound in the word burn, we know that there should be how many syllables? 1. So again, when you hear a new vowel sound, you should be making a new syllable. Like the word turbulence, how many vowels do we hear or see? And this is the same. 3. So in the word turbulence, how many parts should be to that word? 3. Turbulence. So if there are 3 parts, that there are 3 syllables. So you're just helping them to understand how to break words apart. So then you move on, and let's go back. Before you even move on, you want to make sure that they understand this pattern. So we have the vowel, then the R. The vowel, then the R. Vowel, then the R. Vowel, then the R. All the way through, just so that they understand that the R is always going to follow a vowel. Vowel, then the R. Vowel, then the R. Vowel, then the R. And again, it's repetition. And the repetition is going to help solidify that in your kids' mind, just so they understand that pattern. So then the next part would be to move forward and have them make a chart. So then they would go down and make a chart just like we have here. They would need to write down AR, ER, IR, OR, and UR just like we have here. It's up to you if they write both example words. It's up to you if they write one, but they need to at least have one just so they can have a reference or a mentor. So once they have the chart completed and they've started to write down some of their example words, then you want to guide them into help filling out some of these different patterns with the chart. So in other words, what are some other AR vowel control words we can think of? What are some other ER vowel control words we can think of? All the way through each one. And if they're wrong, then that's fine. Spell it anyway, and then see if they can notice if it fits that pattern or not. But this part would still be part of your whole group, with them realizing if words actually are matching that pattern. So like another word here we could write would be guitar. And if you notice that the AR words, AR controlled vowels are highlighted, we need to do something with this. So I'm not going to necessarily highlight it, but I'm going to circle it just so that they can see that it matches that pattern. Vowel followed by R. And do that same thing on ER, the same thing on IR, the same thing with the rest of these. So here's another one for ER. All right, so my word is terrible. All right, how many parts does the word terrible have? Should be 3. 1. I know that line's a little messy. We might not be able to see it. 1, 2, and 3. Okay. What do we notice about the ER? Vowel and then the R, which is part of its own syllable. So again, get them to see that and have them come up with words. They'll be able to play with the words and come up with a list, especially if you have them working in groups. And then finally, the last part here is now you try it. Okay. So as they're reading, they need to start looking for these particular words. Okay. Words that match the pattern. AR, ER, IR, OR, UR. They should find at least a few. I'd say 2 to 3. If you've given them 10 minutes for reading, they're going to find 2 to 3. If for some reason they don't find 2 or 3, then you have them come up with their own words that they could include in their book, or just come up with words that match that pattern just for more practice. I also have this personal narrative, which is about a baseball game, and it simply targets our controlled vowels. So that could be something. It doesn't necessarily need to turn into a whole full-blown out activity, but I'll give you all that just so you can have some additional support and just some more practice and another resource for your kids if they need it. And that concludes our video.